Alright, hello everyone and welcome to AEW Discussion. I'm your host of AEW Enthusiast, Dougie Doug. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing Dynamite November 22nd, 2023 edition. And this edition of Dynamite kicked off the Gold League for the Continental Classic. It was an end of the three matches that were had. Solid in-ring action with all three of those matches. This show also dealt with the fallout from Full Gear and set up what is probably the main event of World's End, with MJF defending the world title against Samoa Joe. And with that, we're going to get right into the action, starting with the first match on the Continental Classic Gold League, Swerve Strickland versus Jay Lethal. And it should not be much of a surprise to anyone that these two had a good match, focused on the idea of each competitor exploiting the other's injury, that ended with Strickland delivering a double stomp for the pinfall, kicking off the episode of Dynamite, kicking off Dynamite with the most buzzworthy star from the latest pay-per-view was the right call, and Strickland did not disappoint. The fans of Chicago were behind him and greeted him with an enormous pop, making the opener feel like an even bigger deal. A great start to the show. Strickland gets the win and goes up 3 points. Mjf and Adam Cole promo. So this segment went on for some time, probably longer than it needed to, and the biggest question here is why Cole would be insistent on MJF honoring his agreement with Samoa Joe for a world title match. Why does that matter to him? Now, could it be that Adam Cole is the man behind the mask? It would make sense if he was, it would make sense. I suppose there's an argument, or maybe not make sense, but I suppose there's an argument to be made for that too, especially if, when you think about the Acclaim getting laid out, maybe there's some tie-in there. To be honest, I have no idea who it is, and I don't really even have a guess. I don't know if it's Adam Cole. I wouldn't necessarily think it's Adam Cole. Maybe it's Jack Perry. I don't think it's Jack Perry, and even if it was, that would probably be the least exciting outcome. So it seems like we could be getting closer to figuring out who this person is, and that's all for the better. It's been a fun little angle, who's the person behind the mask, but you gotta start working towards unmasking the person, and it appears AEW is starting to do that, or slowly but surely starting to get around to that. Anyway, this was a multi-layered segment that accomplished a few different things and got MJF on screen despite his injury. Good stuff, even if the friendship between MJF and Adam Cole appears to have cooled off, or the story angle, whatever it is, it's cooled off compared to what it was 2 or 3 months ago, but I think that's more due to injury and not a fall in popularity. Continental Classic Gold League, Rouge versus Switchblade Jay White. A good competitive match between two men who did a solid job of putting over the physical exhaustion they experienced after Full Gear. Jay White losing in the world title match. That was a pretty grueling match for him. And then Rouge competing in a ladder match. They put over White as resourceful, even if he cannot rely on outside interference from Bullet Club Gold. It was a great bounce-back win for one of the top guys in the company after his loss at Full Gear. For Rouge, though, it was another disappointing defeat despite another performance solidifying him as a premier wrestler in AEW. So Jay White gets the win and goes up 3-0. Continental Classic Gold round, Jay Briscoe versus Jon Moxley to close the show, and it seemed like AEW was pressed for time as this went past the top of the hour, which for me would be 9 o'clock living in Central Time. So this was more rushed than it otherwise may have been. The match was still a grueling battle between a former world champion and one of the more respected and influential wrestlers of the last 2 decades. Briscoe bled, showed great toughness while absorbing everything thrown at him, and only succumbed after a stomp in the second Death Rider. Moxley winning felt like a foregone conclusion, so that was no surprise. But it is time to start doing something mean with Briscoe, because these high-profile losses he's accumulated, they will add up eventually. So yeah, that's pretty much the first night of the tournament here. Moxley wins and goes up 3-0. And you know what? If there's one thing I can't say about the tournaments, is that it has potential to produce some good to great in-ring action, and we saw good in-ring action here. Not great, it was good. But certainly the field is a pretty talented one, although it certainly does put it certainly is. It's a talented field. I think the point I'm trying to make is that you have certain guys in there that should be picking up wins, but unfortunately, they're just gonna have to take a loss. Like Roosh is a guy who should be picking up wins in this tournament, but he already lost the first match. I'd say, did I put Jay? I meant to put Mark. I meant to put Mark Briscoe here. That's my bad. I just now realizing that. But I was meant to say Mark Briscoe. But yeah, Mark Briscoe's a guy who also should pick up a win. But Moxley's a tough guy to beat, so in a way that's understandable. And I guess Jay White could use a bounce back after losing to a guy on one good leg and a dislocated hip. So I guess there's that, and Strickland won that Texas Death match, so you gotta follow it up with a win. So in a way, the logic makes sense behind who won, but also you have 3 other guys who can certainly use some wins and some momentum. So in conclusion, the biggest draw of this show was the Continental Classic, yet I felt like those matches were shortened in time, especially the 2 that came after the opener, because of the need to get 2 promo segments on the show. Now, not saying those promo segments didn't need to be on the show, but you could have certainly cut back on the time. It seemed like Tony Khan, well, his biggest knock on him for this episode was just a poor lack of time, or a poor time management. Instead of putting on a strictly wrestling show, that would have been a nice change of pace. The show was interrupted by angle-heavy segments that again, should have taken up less time than they ultimately did. What went down between the ropes was good as expected, but could have been even more. So they had to make time for segments elsewhere. The show above average because of the in-ring quality, but again, poor time management of Tony Khan. He got to figure that out. This tournament is more important than promo segments that go over 10 minutes. So figure it out. And with that will conclude this episode of AEW Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.